Hi there, I'm Lynn Keddie and I'm here to show you how I paint expressively. And if you can get any tips on how to paint expressively from what I do, then my mission is successful. Okay, so today I'm going to be painting a hedgerow scene because it's that time of year, it's spring, the hedgerows are blooming. And a year ago I did a whole series of paintings which I called hedgerow. Right, it's always useful to remember your bucket of water. I use quite a big container of water, as you can see. What colours have I got? I've got cadmium yellow, I've got lemon yellow, ultramarine blue and cerulean blue, and this is a quinacridone magenta. I like to have a cool blue and a warmish blue, a warm yellow and a cool yellow, because with that combination of colour temperatures and paints you can mix quite a lot of different colours. So let's get going. I'm going to use my trusty spatula, which is great for this kind of thing, but I am only painting a tiny little painting, so it's really in miniature almost, but nevertheless lovely. One thing I have forgotten is white and my favourite, raw umber. What I find is when you mix raw umber with any other combination of colours, it slightly softens it, so it's not as aggressive and desaturating it as black, but it just softens the colour a little bit and mutes it almost and makes it really very beautiful. So let's start off with the sky. I'm going to just dab a bit of white there with a little bit of the blue. This is the cerulean blue. If you add a little bit of the umber, raw umber to that, it will grey it down. It'll make it a more of a grey colour. So only a tiny bit though. And that's the thing about colour mixing. You'll get used to this. But if you're not used to colour mixing, just add little bits of certain colours so that you don't end up with a very saturated colour, because it's very easy just to go crazy and you end up with colours that you just don't like. So that's a very, very pale blue. Now it almost looks white there, but if I put it onto this very white paper, you can see how blue it actually is. And I'm being very rough with this. I'm not fussing about it. So I'm going in with some white, and I'm going to make that a little darker, just a section of it, not all of it, to make it sort of more blue and less sort of almost hazy daylight looking. And I'm just going to put that in. Little bit of, that's too much, you see, that's a tiny bit of raw umber and that's gone quite brown. I'm going to put a tiny bit of ultramarine blue in. That's mixed that. As you can see, lots of different colours are going together, but it'll work, it'll work. So I've got a rather nice grey coming in. Get some more white in for clouds. And they're really just, let me move this over a little bit, I can't, really lovely, smooth marks to get the sense of a lovely spring day. In fact, going to go quite a long way down. And I may paint over that, but for now I just want to make sure that I'm covering it. And as you can see, the marks I'm making are very loose. Okay, let's get that bit in here. It's a bit too much blue, more white. I just want to get the feeling of a lovely sort of gentle afternoon walk sort of thing. Okay, and I try and do this, and often I don't do it, but I always say make a mark and leave it, because you'll find that those marks that you make without thinking too much about it are often the best. So let's clean off our spatula, because I don't want to mix a lot of white in with my greens that I'm about to mix. So I'll mix I can mix quite a dark green with cadmium yellow and that blue. Now I always say to people, do mix a decent amount, because once you've mixed it, you can't make exactly the same colour. You might not want to make exactly the same colour, but I'm just going to do some, let's call them grass. I think a sort of grassy type of feel going on. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon yellow to that, just at the bottom, to get a different green going in. A bit more. Lemon yellow is quite transparent, so it doesn't have much tinting strength. And the thing about this palette, well, it's not actually a palette knife, but it's got a pointed end and a rounded end, which is really useful for grass things and flower things. So just, that's almost neat lemon yellow, and change the direction of your strokes so they're not always going in the same direction. I want to make this quite, I guess, dreamy really. So got some nice greens going in here. And if you keep mixing various different amounts of the basis of your green, so blues and yellows, you will end up with lots of different greens in the painting, which is kind of what you want, because I want to get something going on in the background which is going to be a bit more of a blue colour for a bit more of a distant feel. I'm just going to pop that in there. Like it's a hill in the background. That's what that is. So we've got some kind of a horizon going on there. Very simple. So much smoother because it's in the distance, and then I can carry on again with putting in some grassy feeling things going on. I want to get some dark in there, and I use blue, raw umber to get a really nice dark grey. So it's not blue, it'll be grey, and we can put that in. It's mixing together with the colour that's not, obviously not dried yet. I mean, if it was a very hot day it probably would have dried, but it isn't. So we've got some lovely marks going on now in the foreground. We've got a lovely gentle scene, if you like, in the back. I'm just going to wipe that paint off again. Now there's sort of green where there shouldn't be green, so I'm just going to have to paint over that. Okay, so let's carry on with some of these sort of fuzzy marks, I'm going to say. This is not how I was envisaging painting this, but I'm enjoying the way it's coming out. And it's always best, and I always say this to people, try not to envisage what you want to paint, because it will never come out like that. And I'm the worst. I do it all the time, and then I realise, come on, Lynn, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. That's not what you tell people. So I'm just making some very rough marks here, just to get the idea of, whoops, that's a bit too, get the idea of grasses waving in the wind. Now, at the moment there's lots and lots of buttercups everywhere. So I'm going to attempt to splatter this with some buttercup type of paint, but without it going absolutely everywhere, which is going to be entertaining. I think what I'm going to do, because I think I could easily ruin this, I've got a piece of baking paper, greaseproof paper, baking parchment, all sorts of different names. But essentially it's just there. I'm placing it there. Hopefully the sky has dried. I've got a little bit of paint on a bristle brush and I'm going to go quite close to this, whoops, and see what I can do to get some buttercups. It's not working brilliantly well. Maybe it's the brush. No, it's the artist. You can't blame your tools. You can't blame your tools. Okay, keep going. Press on. Oops. We've got drifts. I'm going to go with buttercups. That's okay. That's okay. Right. It hasn't gone on the sky, but it has made that go a bit funny. So I'll get my... It stuck to it when it was wet, and that's what happens. I'm actually going to get a clean one and just sort that out, because if I use that one it might have a little bit of green on it. I don't want green in my sky. Okay, might go back into that with... This one isn't as bendy and it's nowhere near as easy to use as this one. Let's go back and see if we can just sort that out. Okay. Okay. Now I want more darks because there's just not enough tonal difference going on, although it is quite dark there. Look, I've got white on my... This is what you do when you kind of get going. You suddenly kind of make mistakes, and they're not always the best mistakes to make. So that's quite blue. I don't want it too blue. If I add a little touch of yellow in, it'll go a greeny colour. Get a touch of green in there. There we go. So I've got a very dark colour going in there. So I'm going to, and again, use the fact that this is still wet and you can draw through it with the edge of the spatula, which is a nice thing to do. Okay, now I want to get in some real lights into that. So this time it's just lemon yellow, maybe a touch of campion, and I'll just get some in somehow. Okay, very loose marks, very loose marks. Okay. So what have we got in the hedgerows? We've got lots and lots of very beautiful, the common name is Queen Anne's lace, cow parsley. So let's work out how we can actually paint in cow parsley. Not the easiest of things to do, and I might actually be better off leaving this to dry, but hey, let's just see. I've got just a little brush, and I'm just going to see what happens if I dab. You can't really see it in there, but it's probably a good thing. There we go, cow parsley. So very loose marks, dabbing it straight down, and you know, it's working. It's looking a bit like cow parsley. Don't make it too regimented, obviously. Have it going off the sheet of paper. Oops, that's a little bit too... You've got to keep that quite dry, that brush. Okay, so that's sort of drifting around there, which is rather lovely. Put a little bit here. And what I'd like to do is have a little bit of pink in there, because you very often find campion growing through hedgerows, and that's just really dots and little dots of pink. So how should we do that? How shall we do that? Let's do it. I think I'm just going to get a tiny brush actually. So I've got this quinacridone pink, which is a bit on the dark side, so I'll get a little bit of that white mixed in with it. And you know, it's a tiny little flower, so it's just going to be little dots, and I'll put some of the darker pink in just for variation. But it's a pretty little thing that you see. It doesn't grow tall. This is probably a little bit. But it's a lovely, lovely flower. Let's have some darker pinks going in with that dark, because I really love it when you get that sort of, those dark tones together. Okay. Now I was going to use my secret weapon, which is this. It's a grass seed, which I picked on my walk, which is actually quite dried out now. That's not a problem. And what I do, I don't even know if this really needs it, but I'm going to show you anyway, is you run it through the paint, whichever colour you want to use. It could be a mixture of colours. There's not a lot on there, I don't think. Let's see. Run it through, and then very gently you just tap it on the paper. Now I haven't got a lot of colour on that, so I'm going to paint some on. And it is quite nice having little flecks of a different colour going in. So you've got the green and the yellow. Let's put a bit of the yellow on there. And then, like I said, just tap it very gently, and you get these absolutely gorgeous effects of grass, which is growing a little bit taller in the hedgerow. But isn't that brilliant? So simple, and it just adds so much to it. It's incredible. I love things like that. So a little bit more, have a darker colour going in, and don't go crazy, because you don't want to overdo it. You know, you can easily overdo it, as we all know when to stop. But you get this rather magical effect. Okay, let's put that there. I'm going to probably add a little bit of lighter pink in here. I'm going to dab this very lightly. Again, this is really just to add differences, which, as we all know, differences make a painting more interesting. Okay, now that's just a really quick sketch that we did, not thinking too much about it, using some very simple tools, but I think I think it works. Let's just have a look and see if I can peel this off without tearing the paper. Very, very carefully. A really adorable little country scene of springtime, hedgerows. You can imagine yourself walking through into a beautiful field full of buttercups, and very simple to paint. As long as you keep things simple, don't overthink it, use simple tools, and just enjoy the process. And if you like this, do take a look at my book, How to Paint Flowers Expressively in Acrylics. There's a link in the description to the Amazon site that you can buy it from, whatever country you're in. And if you like this video, thanks very much for watching to the end. Do subscribe if you haven't, so then you'll never miss another one. Tell your friends about it, and most of all, have fun painting, because it is the best thing to do. It's so relaxing, it's so much fun. And I'll see you again soon. Bye for now. I thought I'd just take a moment to show you a book that I wrote last year, and it's called How to Paint Flowers Expressively in Acrylics. I decided to do it because I know that a lot of you like painting from photographs, and I have been a garden photographer for many, many years, over 20, and I have lots of lovely photographs of flowers and gardens. And in this book, I decided to use my photographs as the inspiration for paintings. So it's a kind of a step-by-step guide to how I would approach painting them. It's not exact. It allows you to experiment, which I think is really important, but it gives you some guidelines on how I would approach a painting. So what's inside? I do give, it's a bit about me, a bit of blurb. I do talk about what acrylic paint is and paint qualities and all of that kind of thing, because there are a lot of you out there who really would like to know more about some of the basics of the actual materials that we use. So I have covered that at the beginning of the book. I've covered the tools that I use, or you could use, and I've covered all of the surfaces that I use. Some tips on making a really exciting painting and what composition is all about, and also tips for using acrylic paints. Then I talk about colour mixing. I know this is an area that a lot of you struggle with, but my best advice is once you understand the colour wheel, you will be able to mix any colour. And it's just about practice, as with everything, it's just about practice. There are lots and lots of tips for you. But here we get on to the meat of it, and which is the flowers for your inspiration. So these are all my photographs, which you're more than welcome to use as inspiration. And at the beginning of the book, I will go through quite a lot of information about what I've done. So I've got the colours that I used, I talk about the composition and getting going, I talk about the tools that I use. That's my favourite kitchen spatula. I think it works brilliantly. Different things that I work through, so it's quite a lot of information. I've even used a seed head in this painting, which is great fun. And that's how the book works all the way through. There's lots of lovely paintings and photographs with information, and each chapter will tell you the colours that I used. With each photograph, I give you a little story. So in this one, it's in 2010, I captured this shot in a beautiful garden called Moorwood in the Cotswolds in rural England. Henry and his wife were growing a national collection of climbing roses in an ancient walled garden enclosing an orchard filled with gnarled fruit trees. Alone on a beautiful summer evening, I was fortunate enough to photograph it. The old Cotswold stone walls were clothed in beautiful roses in colours of pink, peach, pure white and deep red, their petals falling gently to the ground like confetti. Henry had planted plenty of oxeye daisies tangled among the grasses. I had visited the year before when the walled garden was full of poppies. This time, he explained, they chose not to plant poppies as their son was fighting in Afghanistan. There's a great one which I will share with you, which is painting David Austin's garden. That's not David Austin's garden. That's the painting for David Austin's garden, but this is the story that goes with it. I photographed David Austin's private garden in 2017. David designed this garden in the last years of his life. The statue was crafted by his late wife, Joan. I love how the statue is in a sea of roses. The statue features 2 ducks perched on her hat, a whimsical touch, and according to David, they saw this scene on one of their holidays. My painting only captures the colours and atmosphere. I haven't painted the statue. I felt I wouldn't do it justice. I also chose not to include the gnarled tree trunks either. That said, the statue provides a strong focal point, so you might want to include it, and the trunks frame the scene, adding depth. This is where you need to decide what to keep and what to leave out. I painted a very, very abstracted version of that garden as I remembered it. But remember, I was there, I was in amongst all the roses, and so my view of it is probably a little bit deeper than just using a photograph. So that's the book, and it's available on Amazon if you want to buy it. I hope it's useful. I set out to write it to be helpful in many ways because I know, having run workshops, that people get confused by quite a lot of the aspects of painting, and so this, I hope, will be really useful in a practical way when you're painting. And you can find a link to how you can buy it in the description of this video.